Stop for a moment. Close your eyes if you dare. Imagine standing on a shard of rock miles from the nearest shore, cut off from every familiar voice. Around you, the world is hostile. The sky rages with winter storms. The sea below roars like a living creature, pounding against the cliffs, daring the island to hold its ground. On this lonely perch, your duty is both simple and absolute. Keep the light alive. A single flame, a fragile signal, standing against the immensity of the dark. This is the life of a lighthouse keeper, a life of isolation and ritual. The days pass in routine, polishing lenses, logging the weather, tending the flame. The nights stretch long, filled with wind and salt, and the sound of the sea clawing at the rock. It takes discipline, endurance, and an acceptance that you may be forgotten by the world beyond the waves. But sometimes, even discipline is not enough. In December of 1900, the light on the Flannan Isles went out. When a relief vessel reached the island, the keepers were gone. The rooms were neat, the beds made, the table set as if waiting for supper. But the men themselves, 3 seasoned keepers, had vanished. No distress call, no sign of struggle, no bodies in the water. Only silence. Their disappearance set loose more than a century of questions. Investigators scoured the records, poets turned it into verse, families grieved without answers, and still the mystery endures. How could 3 men vanish so completely from a stone tower in the middle of the sea? What fate overtook them on that winter night? This is the story of Island Moor, the Flannan Isles, and the men who kept its light until the night it went dark.
To understand how strange this disappearance was, you have to picture the place where it happened. The year was 1900. On the largest of the Flannan Isles, Eileen Moor, a new lighthouse had been standing for barely a year. Built by engineer David Allen Stevenson, it was one of the proud achievements of its time. A tower of stone, lantern glass, and machinery rising out of bare rock. Its beam reached nearly 20 miles across the sea, guiding ships through some of the most treacherous waters off Scotland's west coast. This corner of the Atlantic was infamous. Sudden storms, thick fogs that rolled in without warning, hidden reefs waiting just below the surface. To sailors, the Flannan Light was both comfort and warning. It said, you were not alone, but danger is never far. The keepers stationed there worked in rotating shifts, weeks at a time. On that winter posting, the principal keeper was James Ducat, 43 years old. He was steady, experienced, a man with a wife and 4 children waiting for him on shore. With him was Thomas Marshall, just 28, younger, unmarried, but respected for his patience and diligence. And filling in for an ill colleague, William Ross, was Donald MacArthur. He was 40, married with 2 children. By trade a stonemason, he was also an occasional relief keeper, known for his strong work ethic, though some said he had a temper when tested. 3 men brought together by duty, living in isolation, separated from the mainland by miles of water. Their days were ruled by routine, checking the lamp, recording the weather, watching the sky and sea. The beam swept out over the Atlantic each night like clockwork. Then, on December 15th, something changed. The transatlantic steamer Arctur, passing the Flannans at midnight, logged that the lighthouse was dark. No beam cut the night. No pulse of light marked the rocks. 3 days later, this report reached the Northern Lighthouse Board in Leith. It was the first official sign that something was terribly wrong on Eileen Moor. But the North Atlantic had no mercy. 11 long days passed before a relief vessel could even attempt the crossing. Each day without a signal, without the sweep of that light, deepened the dread on the mainland. Families and colleagues knew the dangers of Eileen Moor, but silence this complete was something new, something ominous. At last, on Boxing Day, December 26th, the Hesperus pushed through heavy seas and closed in on the island. Captain Jim Harvey and his crew scanned the shore and felt the weight of absence. No flag greeted them from the pole. No supply crates waited at the landing. Nothing stirred but the crash of waves and the howl of the wind. Relief keeper Joseph Moore was ordered ashore. Alone, he climbed the steep, slick steps, every footfall sharp against the quiet. At the gate, locked. At the lighthouse door, shut tight. He forced his way inside. What he found was unsettling. An unmade bed, a jarring break from the usual discipline of lighthouse life, a clock that had stopped, lamps cleaned and filled, ready for use, but dark. The kitchen neatly arranged, as though a meal had just been finished. Then came the details that told of something more sudden, more disturbing. A meal left half-eaten, a chair overturned as if knocked aside in haste, signs of men interrupted mid-motion, mid-thought. And in the midst of it all, one fragile sound, a canary singing softly in its cage, the only living presence in a place that felt abandoned in an instant, swallowed whole by silence.
2 sets of oilskins, the heavy waterproof gear vital for surviving Atlantic storms, were missing from their hooks. Donald MacArthur's, curiously, remained. It suggested 2 men had rushed out, perhaps to face an urgent crisis, while a third followed in haste, unprotected. Outside, the storm's savagery was carved into the landscape. Railings bent like wire, a life buoy torn from its mount, a supply box smashed 110 feet above the sea. Even turf was ripped away 200 feet beyond the high water mark, proof of waves of terrifying force. Joseph Moore, the relief keeper, later remembered the unsettling calm inside. The kitchen utensils were all very clean, which is a sign that it must be after dinner sometime they left. Left for what? No one could say. When Superintendent Robert Muirhead of the Northern Lighthouse Board arrived on December 29th to lead the inquiry, he found a scene that defied reason. The Flannan Isles, a barren outcrop named after a 7th-century Irish saint, already carried the weight of myth. Islanders whispered of fairies, spirits, and curses, legends woven into the lonely rock. Now 3 seasoned keepers had vanished without a trace, igniting fascination well beyond the Hebrides. The story echoed across Britain, then spilled into newspapers overseas. In 1900, the Flannan Isles stood at the edge of the known world. Communication relied on passing ships and storm-delayed tenders. Investigations here didn't fall to the police, but to the Lighthouse Board, whose duty was both protection and inquiry. Yet even with their authority, Muirhead's team could draw no firm conclusion. What remained was absence. No struggle, no bodies, only silence. In that silence, the mystery deepened. And what wasn't found spoke more chillingly than anything left behind. Robert Muirhead, seasoned mariner and superintendent of the Northern Lighthouse Board, approached the case with calm precision. Every observation he made was logged in his report, submitted January 8, 1901. His conclusion was stark. He wrote,
From evidence which I was able to procure, I was satisfied that the men had been on duty up till dinner time on Saturday, the 15th of December, that they had gone down to secure a box in which the mooring ropes, landing ropes, etc. were kept, and which was secured in a crevice in the rock about 110 feet above sea level, and that an extra-large sea had rushed up the face of the rock, had gone above them, and coming down with immense force had swept them completely away. His theory painted a grim sequence. Perhaps James Ducott spotted a problem, a loosened rope, or a swell crashing dangerously near the crane, and stepped out to secure the gear. Thomas Marshall, ever dutiful, followed to assist. Then the telling detail: Donald MacArthur's missing oilskins. Known for his quick temper, MacArthur may have broken protocol in his haste, dashing out without protection, a sign of urgency or panic. 3 men, caught in the wrong place at the wrong moment, faced the merciless weight of the Atlantic. The evidence spoke to the ocean's violence. Iron railings twisted like wire, a life buoy torn free, a supply box shattered high above the sea. Turf ripped 200 feet past the tide line. Modern hydrodynamic studies lend weight to Muirhead's conclusion. The cliffs and gullies of the Flannans could amplify waves into crushing walls of water, powerful enough to erase men entirely. It remains the most plausible explanation. Not a crime, not a ghost story, but a devastating reminder of nature's ability to overwhelm, leaving only silence in its wake.
But the human mind doesn't rest easy with silence. Faced with a void so chilling, so absolute, it hungers for story. Where facts end, myth rushes in. And in the Flannan case, that hunger birthed a tapestry of sensationalism that still clings to the legend more than a century later. The most enduring tale revolves around the Lighthouse logbook. Whispered across Scotland and retold abroad, the story went that the keepers scribbled frantic entries in their final hours, storms of unmatched fury, men cowering in prayer, and a last cryptic line: "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." Those passages spread like wildfire, finding permanence in Wilfred Wilson Gibson's haunting 1912 poem, Flannan Isles, and echoing through countless retellings. But here is the hard truth: those entries never existed. Meticulous researchers, from historians to investigative journalists like Mike Dash, have combed the record and exposed the myth. The real log ends matter-of-factly on December 13th, followed by routine weather notes for the 14th and morning of the 15th. Nothing frantic, nothing fearful, just barometer readings and wind directions, the dull cadence of duty. Even the weather records from the period contradict the legend, showing no catastrophic storm on the 12th or 13th. The likely calamity, as evidence suggests, came later, around December 15th, the very date the Arch Tour reported the darkened light. Yet the fabricated version proved irresistible. And into that space of uncertainty rushed still wilder speculation. Some imagined the men swept away not by waves, but by monsters, serpents or great seabirds conjured from Celtic waters. Others whispered of sprites, curses, or the phantom ghost ship said to haunt the 7 hunters. And in later years, the myths grew stranger still. Abductions by aliens, slips into parallel worlds, vanishings beyond time itself. The Flannans became not just a tragedy, but a stage, and the actors, 3 missing men, vanished so completely they could be cast in any story the mind could conjure.
Then came the theories of foul play, the kind of dark, human twists that surface whenever the unknown feels too vast to bear. Some whispered of a murder-suicide,
with Donald MacArthur, infamous for his temper, killing the others in a fit of rage before hurling himself into the sea. Others imagined a desperate brawl, the men grappling at the cliff's edge until all three were lost to the waves. And then there were the stranger tales, that the keepers staged their disappearance to escape debts or were taken by pirates, foreign agents, even shadowy government forces. Still others stretched reality to its limits, invoking cryptids or freak 200-foot swells beyond imagination. But under close scrutiny, these stories collapse. The evidence simply isn't there. Inside the lighthouse, nothing suggested prolonged violence, no broken furniture beyond a single overturned chair, which could just as easily have been knocked over in a rush or shaken loose by a raging storm. The lamps were trimmed, the meal half-finished, the quarters in careful order. Signs of life interrupted, not abandoned. And the missing bodies, while haunting, are not unusual in the merciless sweep of the North Atlantic. The ocean swallows quickly, and often without leaving a trace. So when you strip away the myths, the folklore, the rumors, the desperate human need for a more dramatic ending, what remains is the hardest truth of all. 3 men, skilled and steadfast, went to work on a lonely island and never returned. Most likely claimed by the sea, their story remains etched in silence, not with answers, not with closure, but with a void, one that continues to pull us in, a century later, searching for what may never be found.
Is it our need for a complete story, every piece fitting neatly into place, that keeps us returning to Island Moor? Or is it something older, deeper, the fear stirred by this tale, the fear of the unknown, of forces vast and indifferent, of a world that can erase us without leaving so much as a whisper behind? The Flannan Isles lighthouse still stands, its beam cutting across the restless Atlantic. Long automated now, it no longer needs human hands to tend it. Yet the memory of those who once lived there, and the 3 who vanished without trace, lingers in the salt-heavy air, a ghost presence woven into the stone. This story is a reminder, stark and unsettling, that for all our science, our technology, our hunger for certainty, there remain places where the veil between the known and the unknown stays perilously thin, places where answers do not come, where silence endures. And sometimes the most disturbing truth is not what we uncover, but what we never will. Like the ocean itself, dark, unyielding, and eternal, it holds its secrets close, waiting, watching, and reminding us of just how fragile our understanding truly is.